Welcome to Hoystory on Air, Season 1, Episode 13. Sorry for the delays between posts. You pay what you get for, and most of you don't pay. I have been working very hard. A lot. I've been working a lot on my upcoming book. There's a QR code. You can pre-order the ebook on Kindle. That's that. There will be a printed paperback version. You can buy that as well. That's still in the works. I spent a lot of time yesterday, learning a lot about audiobooks and what the audio needs to be for audiobooks. So there will be an audiobook as well for those of you who prefer listening to my dulcet tones. It's more complicated than I thought it was. I'm wearing the headphones today because we're going to talk about illegal voting and illegal aliens voting. Let me first say I'm not a huge fan of the Vote Act that they're debating. I guess passed the House. They're debating it in Congress or in the Senate, and they want do a talking filibuster to force. I don't know about any of that. I generally don't think it's a great idea to federalize the elections. I didn't think it was a great idea back in 2020 when the Democrats, 2021, when the Democrats tried to do it shortly after Joe Biden came into office. I don't think it's a good idea for, I just don't like the precedent. Having said that, this idea that our elections are fine, there's no problems. We don't need voter ID. We don't need to worry about illegal aliens voting. I don't buy it. A friend online posted this video, and this is why I'm kind of wearing the headphones today, touting this. It's about a 30-minute talk between Joyce Vance on the left and Stacey Abrams, the twice-failed Georgia gubernatorial candidate, on the right. My first response, and this was promoted as, the Vote Act, this is evidence we don't need the Vote Act. Look at all the facts presented here. And I'm just starting thinking that, like, Stacey Abrams said the Georgia gubernatorial election was stolen from her. At least once. At least the 2020, I think it was the 2021, maybe it was it's probably 2016. But at least one of these elections was stolen from her. And I'm sorry, you can't go around complaining about that and then say everything's fine when the other guys, the other side's in charge and has the power. So this is 27 minutes. We're probably not going to watch the whole thing. I'm gonna I raised the idea that Stacey Abrams probably not a credible source of information, and then the response was, well, didn't you watch any of it? It's like, okay, I'll watch a couple minutes of it, and it quickly devolved to the point where I'm getting up and stomping away because my biggest failing, ladies and gentlemen, and I've known this for a long time, and I work on it. I try hard. I really do. I do not suffer fools lightly. I suffer a fool. I get up, I walk away. So, having said that, we'll see how far I can get through this. I've got a few things planned out, to continue presenting on this later on. At the end, once I've reached my tolerance limit. So and that's the reason why I've got the headphones on, because I'll forget to mute myself, basically, if I have the audio coming through, on the speakers here. And I need to mute myself so you don't get bad audio. Then I need to unmute myself so you can hear me talk. And I'm just worried that I'm going to screw it up. So headphones on. I got the audio coming in through the headphones, which you can't hear. And let's take a listen here. Let's see what these ladies have to say. And they've got a little intro before they get into it. So, Bear with me.
For that purpose, but is now saying that you have to jump through hoops to prove your citizenship for the one right that should be the most fundamental in this country.
Don't do this. Don't subscribe.
We're live.
I don't know what this is, audio delay or something. Don't subscribe to her Substack.
Good morning to those of you who are joining us. Stacey and I, well, I don't know about Stacey, but
Seriously, you could at least edit out that garbage error at the beginning. I mean, you put the little thing at the beginning and then you put this, where I guess I shouldn't be one to criticize since both these people have far more subscribers than I do, but here we go.
I'm still drinking coffee so that I'll be loaded for bear and ready to go. We'll give y'all a few minutes to file in and then we'll get started. But please tell us where you're joining us from. I see Portland, Maine already on the screen, one of my favorite places to drink coffee.
Is this a thing? I mean, tell me where if you want to put in the comments where you're from, that's fine. I don't mind. But this whole, we need to create a community here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm drinking water. Please tell me where you're drinking water from. I'd appreciate it. And Stacey's just there, just.
As y'all are joining us, I'll just fill you in on why we're doing this Saturday morning Substack Live. And I actually have a story about this because I can remember maybe it must have been 15 or 20 years ago when I was first approached by a then Republican Attorney General in the state of Alabama, who was peddling the idea that we needed stronger voter identification requirements in Alabama, in that case, in order for people to vote when they showed up at the polls. Of course, now under the SAVE Act, it's been even moved back a step to registration. And the argument that he pitched to me at the time was, well, you've got to have identification to cash a check or to do any number of other things. Of course, you should have to have it to vote. And that argument sounds reasonable on its face until
it should, because it is reasonable.
You dig deeper. But the minute you start to dig,
this sounds, I mean, we're starting to sound here like, oh, we have secret truths to tell you. Let us tell you about this. You've seen the facade. Let us show you what's behind that.
Dig into what it actually means and how many people it has the potential to keep from voting, you can see why this whole idea of enhanced voter identification is a non-starter designed to suppress the vote. And look, voting is a right. It's not a privilege. You shouldn't have to jump through hoops in order to vote. As long as you're in a...
At this point, hello, Jack. Jack, you need to go back over there. I'm going to have to spray you with water if you don't. You know what else is a right? This is one that I kind of care about. Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. They don't think that these two women, I guarantee you, are for every single gun control law, no matter how odious, no matter how onerous it is, that prevents you from exercising your Second Amendment right. I guarantee you they're for wait times. I guarantee you they're for super enhanced background checks. They're probably for all of that. I can almost guarantee you they're probably for all of that. But, voting? Oh, no, forget about it. Whatever. Do whatever.
American citizen qualified to vote. It should be easy for you to do that.
It should be easy for you to buy a gun. It should be easy for you to walk around in public with said gun. If you are a citizen and you are not a disqualified person, you don't have mental illness, you aren't a convicted felon. That's one of the things that just got me about this whole thing was it should be really easy. No problems. You say you're a citizen, you can vote, and they don't treat the Second Amendment this way. They don't treat a lot of other rights this way, this flippantly, this, whatever. I moved her back.
By a then Republican Attorney General in the space until you dig deeper. But the minute you start to dig into what it actually means and how many people it has the potential to keep from voting, you can see why this whole idea of enhanced voter identification is a non-starter designed to suppress the vote. And look, voting is a right. It's not a privilege. You shouldn't have to jump through hoops in order to vote. As long as you're an American citizen qualified to vote, it should be easy for you to do that. And that's what this fight is all about. Republicans have a 30-year, probably longer history, quite frankly, in the Deep South of using the myth of voter.
History lesson. The ones who were trying to suppress the vote in the Deep South wasn't the Republicans. Jim Crow wasn't the Republicans. But we have to pretend it was because,
Broad to suppress Americans' rights to vote. And this is just the newest incarnation of that. But it's nothing new, y'all. I mean, this is what we've been seeing down here for ages. Donald Trump, the ultimate, snake oil salesman, has managed to take this and put it on steroids. But it's more of the same. So, Stacey, can we just start with the basics here? I mean, it seems reasonable, right? You use an ID to cash a check, or at least back when we cashed checks, you did. Why shouldn't you have to have a voter ID to vote or to register to vote?
Okay, so we're going to start with some basic definitions. So voter suppression has 3 parts. Can you register and stay on the rolls? Can you cast a ballot?
Here's a question I got for these types. Why register? Why have voter registration at all? That is a barrier to voting. Why can't you just show up, say, hey, this is my precinct, this is the address I live at. Trust me, I'm a citizen, and register to vote. And vote. Why even have to have registration? Well, because it's like the minimum step towards preventing fraud. That one's okay. I don't know. Lots of states, in order to encourage people to vote, have same-day voter registration. You walk in there, you say, this is where and you got a utility bill or something. I knew someone who was on a school board in the San Diego area back in the, I want to say 90s, may have been late 80s, could have been 90s, who she didn't live in the school district. This is before they had to have, specific areas, precincts where you lived. So you represented, different areas of the school district. And this woman tried to present a piece of junk mail that went to the residence in her name as evidence that she lived there, and she didn't. So, what are the standards there?
And does that ballot get counted? And anytime the state or the government intervenes to make those things more difficult, that's voter suppression. So,
again, if that's voter suppression, why are we even doing registration? That's a step,
what you just described, voter ID has become this proxy for voter suppression. In 2005, the state...
We're one of the few countries, I say countries, there are certain states in the United States that don't require voter ID. California is one of them. In fact, they can't even ask. If I walked in saying I was, Abdullah Son, or something like that, something that was obviously not a white guy name, they couldn't even ask to see my ID. Sure, whatever. Here you go. Here's a ballot. It's...
The state of Georgia and the state of Indiana introduced restrictive voter IDs. And here's the thing. No state has ever allowed you to vote without identification. Everybody says you have to prove who you are. This is not about voter ID. This is about...
You have to prove who you are kind of sort of at the registration point. Once you're registered, not in California, you don't have to prove who you are. You can walk into a polling place, never have to show ID, as long as you've got a name and an address. As long as you know who lives at that address, you can show up and vote for it. If they already got their their ballot by mail, which one's the right one? You can cause some chaos. Hopefully the right one gets counted and not the fraudulent one. But you can cause a mess just simply because, let me see your driver's license.
Restrictive voter ID. Restrictive voter ID says that you narrow the list of documents that were previously permissible and useful.
Okay. So which ones are we eliminating?
Because you got to remember, we've been doing this for a couple of centuries, and it was working just fine.
Wasn't working just fine when she ran for governor.
There was no real voter fraud.
And we have voter fraud. We have voter fraud all the time. It's not much. We're a big enough country that it's questionable whether it's enough to decide elections. But part of the problem with not requiring voter ID in this kind of lackadaisical, we want to make sure that everyone can vote, and it's not that, and there's not even the slightest speed bump to preventing you from doing that, is by design. We can't know how much fraud there is. I maintain you got to be pretty dumb to get caught. There's ways around. There's ways to get your ballot. There's ways to go and vote illegally, dishonestly, that if you're smart about it, unless they've got cameras in there, and they don't, because if you wanted to say, I want a camera in every polling place, no. That's voter intimidation. That's voter suppression. But for the record, in California, they want cameras in every single gun store, and you've got to keep those videos with audio for years. That law is being challenged because you've got some, firearms licensees who do it from their kitchen table, and so now they've got to have a camera running 24/7 in their home. In California.
So Heritage Foundation analyzed 2 billion votes and found 85 possible instances. And we can go into that later if you'd like.
I looked into that. The Heritage Foundation, they've found people where people were indicted, where people were charged, where a judge said, I've looked at, you've brought a case, I've looked at it, this election was fraudulent. That's happened a couple times in California, where candidates and whatnot were rigging it. Again, we don't know to what extent this is occurring. Because it's kind of designed so we don't know it.
That's heritage, right? I mean, that's not like the liberal Brennan Center.
They don't want people voting. So
they don't want people voting illegally. So it's easy to toss this out. That's not the case. They don't want people voting illegally. And it happens.
The Heritage Foundation was hunting. They have been the largest and loudest, proponents of this notion of voter fraud. And I'm gonna deviate for a second because I think it's important that we have foundational understanding.
Yes.
Voter fraud is one of two things. One, it's impersonating another person in order to cast a ballot. The other is when someone who is legally ineligible, either a non-citizen, someone who's been disenfranchised, or someone who, for some other reason, who's too young, tries to cast a ballot. That's what voter fraud is. Mm-hmm. That does not happen very often in this country.
We don't catch it. We can't. Again, you got to be stupid to get caught. Because when you don't require ID, when you don't require some of this stuff, it's pretty easy. Think about what all these illegal aliens are using. Because just out of curiosity, I went and looked up what it would take for me to register to vote again in Tulare County, which is where I live, Tulare County, California, California Central Valley. Last 6 of the social. Is the state of California double checking to making sure maybe I'm impersonating someone else. Maybe that person doesn't even live in this state. And now I'm using their social to register to vote in California. And there's supposed to be some talk back and forth between the states. But what if that doesn't happen? What if somebody steals Joe Schmo from Illinois' social security number, or the thing is, you don't even need to do that. I think all you need is the last 4 digits. How is that matching up? How can you match that up with anybody? Or you need a driver's license. Illegals get driver's licenses here in California. They're required to it's like, you're not a citizen, blah, blah, blah. It's not a real ID. But I've been having people tell me recently that real IDs aren't proof that you're a citizen. If real IDs aren't proof you're a citizen, then they screwed up the real ID program. I'm sorry. Here we go.
In fact, it is so irregular that they have had to search for decades to find enough instances to fill a cup. Okay? But then you get to voter ID. The problem wasn't that people were using IDs that didn't match who they were. It was that too many people were going through the process. So in 2005, Indiana and Georgia, 2 states that were not known as bastions of liberalism, decided that they needed to make it even more restrictive. And what they said was that government IDs that had been used previously would no longer be permissible, including student identification issued by state government to college students.
That's only in the most... When a school, even if it's a state school, issues an ID, it's not... Here's where we're going to go back to this. What's the next slide say, Matt? Chinese national at the University of Michigan charged with illegally voting in the 2024 election. He had a school ID. I'm not sure if that's what he used. It's Michigan. That's not a red state, usually. Can I use a library card? Is that really evidence of my identity and that I'm a citizen? Can I use a Tulare County library card? I don't know. Let's see.
No longer be permissible. In Texas, they said that you can use your gun license, but not your student ID.
I've kind of already explained how the gun license has more hoops to go through than the student ID. They're fine with all those laws restricting the Second Amendment, but not even a little bump for the right to vote.
Boy, that really tells you what the motivation is, right?
Does it tell you what the motivation is? Only if you're brain dead.
Right?
Exactly. And the reason this matters is that the more restrictive the list of documents, the more we shift the burden of proof from the government that's responsible and has the resources to the people who have the least amount of resources and the least amount of capacity to meet the new restriction.
So no student IDs, but a driver's license. The thing is, Georgia did this again in 2020. And I'll point you back to my book. Buy my book, because I talk about this in my book. If this was Jim Crow 2.0, and the election was going to be, people were going to be disenfranchised. Were there reports of disenfranchisement? Not really. Not really. Certainly not enough to affect the election in any way, shape, or form. But this is the game they play.
When that happens, you limit the number of people who participate. No one says you shouldn't have to prove who you are to vote. 35 states have always had some form of, since we had photographs you could use, they've required photo identification. There are some states that do not require photo identification, but that's usually because the states are so small, everyone's either related or they already.
It's California is among them. This is an outright lie. Outright lie. And Wyoming is the smallest state. I believe it has, population-wise, I believe it has around 800 or 900,000 people in the state. Does everyone know everybody? Wow, what a lie.
Know each other. So it's pretty easy to prove. But what they are pushing for is restrictions that make it impossible for some to meet the obligations. And
if there's someone, I'd like to find out the person who it is who fails to meet the obligations. I pointed this out earlier on one of my shorts. You should check out my shorts on YouTube, youtube.com/Hoystory. There's a shorts playlist. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, says he lost his birth certificate when he was 7 years old. Now, what adult gives a 7-year-old his birth certificate? I have no idea. But he lost it when he was 17 years old. But he says this like 2 weeks after he was over in Germany at this Munich security conference. How'd he get a passport? How do you get a passport? When I had to get a passport, I had my birth certificate. And then he says, I've got no idea even how to replace my birth certificate. There's a website you can go on to. It costs $40. Now, if you're poor and can't afford it, and the state is requiring that, I'm all for requiring the state to provide that sort of stuff. But give me a break.
if you'd like, I can give you some examples.
Please do, because I think it's important to put a face on it.
Okay. So in 2012, Heidi Heitkamp became the U.S. Senator from North Dakota, first Democrat to win in a long time. So when she won, it was a little under 3,000 vote margin in her victory to the U.S. Senate. And a lot of that margin came from the Standing Rock Sioux Native Americans who lived in North Dakota, who'd been a little upset about a proposed pipeline and had the audacity to use the perquisites of democracy to protest and stop that from happening.
Can I just interject for
Please.
1 second? Because
I'm very curious to see what the perquisites of democracy were. Because I don't think it was voting. I think it was probably protesting. I mean, protest all you want. Fine with me. Don't block the road. There's ways to do it legally. I don't think she cares if it's legally.
Former U.S. attorney perspective, my colleagues in both North Dakota and South Dakota during the Obama administration advocated endlessly on behalf of Native Americans to be able to vote. Often they don't have street number addresses, and I know this is where you're going, right? They don't have many of the indicia of residence and citizenship that the rest of us have readily available. And so, given that small margin in Heidi's election,
this is a problem to be solved. This is not an argument against requiring registration or voter ID at all. Solve that problem. Solve that problem.
They went to bat on that in North Dakota, didn't they?
They did. So the North Dakota legislature passed a law saying that if you did not have a street address on your identification, the ID you used to vote could no longer be considered valid. Sounds okay. The problem is this. On Native American reservations, they rarely have street addresses. Why? Because the state or the county has to issue that address. Well, in North Dakota, they refuse to issue the addresses. So you had this false or the zero-sum game where if you were Native American and you lived on this reservation, you had to have an address.
I'm surprised no one sued. I got a feeling somebody's going to tell me they sued to fix this. It happens a lot. Again, I'm not necessarily a big fan of big government, of government, going beyond its bounds. Could they buy firearms? I don't know.
That had to be provided by the county, and the county refused to provide the address, which meant you couldn't have the address on your ID, which meant you couldn't vote because the county wouldn't give you the address. This went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Somebody sued! Oh my gosh!
And the court said, well, Native Americans are a de minimis portion of the population of North Dakota. Therefore, we cannot strike this down because only a few people are getting hurt. Roughly the margin of victory in a U.S. Senate race. And it is now law in North Dakota that the Native Americans who live on reservations, by law, by treaty, are not entitled to identification that meets state law. So that's one example.
Well, they need to fix that. I'm fine with that. Run some people for office. I'll vote for that. I'm not sure she's telling the whole story, to be honest with you. But if that's the case, yeah, do it.
Remember, voting is a right, not a privilege, right? Yeah. Our Supreme Court in action.
I still want to know if they have guns. I really do. I want to know if they have the guns.
The Roberts Court.
Now, here's the second one. In 2000, I think it was 2014, Wisconsin decided to get in on the act. And they passed a law saying, well, you now have to have a birth certificate in order to have an ID. And most people have, if you have your driver's license.
Again, it seems like a small barrier. And again, it seems like something you can fix if you don't have it. Hey, it's like I'm indigent. I don't have Gavin Newsom's wealth. There should be a box you can check on the online site where they issue you one for free. That's just me. Or Democrats could fund it.
Since you've given some proof and you've been doing it for a minute. Well, there's a woman who was born in 1916 in Missouri. And if you remember, if you were Black...
Probably not a worry at this point. She was born in 1916. Odds are she's not around anymore. Could be. Actuarial tables counsel against it.
Before 1968, 65, 68, you were pretty much cordoned off from access to the perquisites of citizenship in the United States under Jim Crow. Well, for many...
Let's just go back. Which political party was responsible for that?
Many Black people, and for a lot of rural people, you weren't born in a hospital. You were born at home, either by choice or because the law did not permit you to be born in a hospital. Well, the Wisconsin law said that in order to have a birth certificate count, it had to include your date and place of birth as proven. Well, if you were born at home, where is the proof? And so birth certificates for millions of Americans do not include the information they're now requiring. And most of these people don't have time machines, and so they can't go back in time and provide photographic evidence. And so this woman in Wisconsin, who'd been voting since the Voting Rights Act of 1965, could not produce the document that Wisconsin required, a birth certificate with her proof of her date and place of birth, because she was born at home. She was denied the right to vote in the 2016 election. Now, in this case, the Supreme Court struck down that law, saying that it was unreasonable.
Okay. Good? Is this a good thing? I mean, we've kind of learned our lessons, right? The Supreme Court struck down that law. You can't do that anymore. So that's going to be an exception to anything that they pass, right? Because you've already got Supreme Court precedent.
To require a standard that could not be met. But that's another example of what happens.
And let me share a personal Missouri story. My mom was born in Missouri, and as she got on in years, no longer had a passport or a driver's license. She moved to Alabama. My mom was the kind of voter who voted in every election. If it was a primary, if it was for dog catcher, Mama was going to figure out who the candidates were and vote. And she needed a birth certificate to vote in Alabama. I knew where she was born, outside of St. Louis, no problem. But when I went to get her birth certificate, they had no record of her birth. It took me months to untangle it. What had happened was the county lines had been redrawn. So the hospital she was born in was in a different county, but that had happened like in the 50s or the 60s. And I mean, it took persistence. And y'all, I'm a trained lawyer, and I spent so much time tracking this down so she could vote. You can imagine what an impediment, both the kinds of cases Stacey's talking about, which is just flat out racial discrimination.
Good for her. Interesting case. This whole idea that you wouldn't have people there, people trying to help these people. I can guarantee you there's plenty of lawyers, lawsuits, civil rights lawsuits. I guarantee you those ones for the Wisconsin one got paid. The Supreme Court said, no, that's illegal. So, sorry, you got paid. Sorry, that's about all I can take of this, really. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to watch the rest of it. And again, I had 2 videos ago, I think Democrats are protesting so much against this because, well, it's like they're cheating. Well, here's Chuck Schumer. I'm not sure he wanted to phrase it this way.
But their bill isn't voter ID, number one. It is about voter registration. It allows ICE to kick tens of millions of people off the rolls, and they don't tell them until Election Day, and you show up and you say, you're not registered anymore. You're not registered here. You're not on the rolls.
Who is ICE looking for? I understand there's a handful of people that they've detained or whatnot who are U.S. citizens. And frankly, I think some of that's the overzealousness by Nome, Kristi Noem, and the rest of them. Just some of that concerns me, to say the least. But he thinks that hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens, or that's what he's telling me. Or he thinks that ICE's numbers are that far off. And like I said, I've seen reports of fewer than 10, probably, maybe fewer than 5 U.S. citizens who've been mistakenly detained by ICE. And he thinks that ICE takes their lists to the various states to pull people, and I'm not sure that's how the bill works, to pull people from voter rolls, that there's going to be hundreds of thousands. Sorry, I don't buy it. Published March 6th. That was 5 days ago. Illegal immigrant charged with voting in Pennsylvania in 5 presidential elections. He was ordered removed from the U.S. in 2000, but remained under ICE supervision while casting ballots. Again, not the brightest. He got caught. But this is happening. So for that 116-year-old, or lady born in 1916, so makes her 110, has problems voting. This guy had no problems voting. So the whole registration thing doesn't seem to be, that's Pennsylvania. That's a purple state. Go figure. I came across this. This is from electoral studies back in 2014. Do non-citizens vote in U.S. elections? First use of a representative sample to measure non-citizens voting in USA. And fair enough, this thing is 12 years old. This publication, 11 and a quarter years old. Haven't seen it haven't seen this sort of thing really duplicated much. But that's because you got people who don't want to see it duplicated. Deny that this happens. And so they ignore it. Some non-citizens cast votes in U.S. elections despite legal bans. Non-citizens favor Democratic candidates, which may be why Biden let 10 million over the border. Plus, this is the interesting. Non-citizen voting likely changed 2008 outcomes, including the Electoral College votes and the composition of Congress. Voter photo identification rules have limited effect on non-citizen participation. I think that's why they're trying to get to the registration. Attack it at the registration point. This is from Just Facts, I think. It's in the show notes. And it's on that 2014 publication. It's 10 years later, 2024. Based on latest available data, enhanced version of a stress-tested methodology from a scholarly journal, a new study by Just Facts, yeah, that's who it is, found that about 10 to 27% of non-citizen adults in the U.S. are now illegally registered to vote. Now, in fairness, fact checkers, whom I don't trust much, are skeptical of this. Fine, but the thing seems to be, this didn't happen, ignore this. And it's not, we need more studies. It's not, we need to look deeper into this. It's not, we need to discover what the truth is. Because the Democrats don't seem at all interested in the truth, and I suspect that's because they suspect that some of these non-citizens are voting, and who knows how many it is. And if we make them citizens, then we definitely get their votes. This refers to Glenn Kessler, who was formerly of the Washington Post fact checker. They say beyond portraying minimums as best estimates. So, you have, when you do a study like this, you've got, okay, here's the number plus or minus. And then they take the minus and they say, that's the best estimate. It's like, no, it's somewhere in that range. Maybe the middle's the best estimate. But Kessler also misleads his readers with a half-truth that the 2014 paper estimated 6.4% of non-citizens voted in 2008 and 2.2% voted in 2010. What Kessler fails to reveal is the 2010's a midterm, so voter numbers are down across the board in midterms. Another one he criticizes links to a study by Just Facts while coyly describing it as the work of one researcher. Despite they've got 2 PhDs in data analytics, the study's been vetted. Kessler also misreports Just Facts study by claiming that it found non-citizens gave Biden almost an extra additional 18,000 votes in Arizona in 2020. The reality, again, the study plainly states that non-citizens gave Biden an extra 51,081 plus or minus 17,000. So somewhere between 33 and 69,000. They note, ironically, Donald Trump was indicted by a D.C. grand jury for accurately citing the lower bound of those figures. I don't know if that's accurate. And the problem is, and this is something I kind of describe in my book, happening quite a bit on other topics. They don't. This is a debate we need to be having. I would love to know if this were true. I don't know that effect, that the Arizona numbers give Trump Arizona in 2020, but he needed more than just Arizona. It wasn't just that. But I want to know if this is true. And when a fact checker comes out and says, "Oh no, this is bogus. This is false, or liar, pants on fire, or 4 Pinocchios," we don't get. It dissuades people from doing honest investigations of this stuff, and that's what we need. Says the redeeming element in Kessler's article is that it alerted Just Facts to the existence of non-citizen voter registration data from 2022. This enabled Just Facts to update previous studies on the issue with the latest available information. Using an enhanced version of the methodology that yielded the same best registration date as the 2014 electoral studies paper, Just Facts' new study finds that roughly 10 to 27% of non-citizen adults in the U.S. are now registered to vote. They've got a link to a spreadsheet there. And again, this link will be in the show notes. You can click on it. You can poke your head around it. I'm for requiring evidence of citizenship to vote, at least when you register. I'm for voter ID when you show up to the polls to vote, or some method of doing it if you do a mail-in. I'd prefer, in my perfect world, the only reason you could have mail-in ballots would be because you're going to be out of town on the date of the election, or you are physically unable to make it to the polls. I wish we returned to, we have one day, that is the day we all vote. It's not 3 weeks beforehand. It's not, all this other sort of stuff. So I've been burned before. I voted for Ross Perot. I was away at college, which that'd be an exception I'd still give. So probably wouldn't have saved my bacon on that. But I voted for Ross Perot, by absentee ballot, a month before Election Day. And then 2 weeks before Election Day, he comes out with this black helicopter thing about, the feds disrupting his daughter's wedding. At that point, I'm like, he's kind of crazy. I mean, I should have voted for George H.W. Bush. We don't know. There's this too. Good news is it looks like voter ID is going to be on the ballot in California, at least requiring it, when you show up to vote. Good thing. But this came out recently out of San Francisco. Take a listen to this.
Possible fraud as some campaigns collect signatures for proposed ballot initiatives for the November election. Thanks for joining us here at 6. I'm Curtis May.
And I'm Edie Lambert. This investigation centers on this video that is circulating online. It appears to show paid signature collectors in San Francisco offering money to people on the streets if they sign the petitions using other people's voter registration information. This would be a violation of state law. KCRA3's political director Ashley Zavala is here now. So let's start with who's involved.
Yeah, well, this video is raising a lot of flags for folks tonight. These signature gatherers are people who are paid to find registered voters and get those voters to sign petitions. And when they get enough signatures, the proposal lands on the ballot and is presented to you, the voter. It is against the law for anyone to forge someone else's information. But the man who captured the scene on video tells us that's exactly what has been happening in San Francisco.
I get $5 too?
Yeah.
And what is it?
Just sign it.
Just sign it?
Yeah. You ready now? First name is going to be Carol.
San Francisco street videographer J.J. Smith capturing what appears to be a crime on camera. Paid signature gatherers offering people $5 to sign ballot initiative petitions using other people's names and information. Smith shot and posted this video on Monday.
What I seen shocked me and surprised me because they was literally coaching people, telling them what name to sign and what address to put down there. And what was more shocking than that is they had that information printed out already on an official document.
We've learned the signature collectors in Smith's video were doing so for ballot initiatives backed by billionaires fighting a proposed wealth tax. The measures include...
Yeah, so this is interesting. Having said that, this is the way it works in California. As far as, especially if you've got deep pockets, is somebody pays these professional signature gatherers to go out and stand in front of Walmart or whatnot and gather signatures. And what is happening here is one of those paid signature gathering firms is defrauding these billionaires. So, hey, if you hate billionaires, they're getting it here. It's a problem. It is a problem. Would ID of some sort solve this? Maybe. The thing is, they're getting paid by the signature. That's why they're given a $5 kickback. They may be getting paid $15 per signature. I don't know how much they get paid, but they're kicking back $5 obviously to people who participate in the fraud. They're doing that because if you see one of these one of these petition forms, and it's the same handwriting for 5 different names on the same sheet of paper, that screams fraud really quick. They're still supposed to check those signatures against what's on file from the registration. These, again, would probably get tossed out. You'd hope they get tossed out. No matter what, the campaign is for. I personally think that this billionaire taxes in California are stupid. But what's happening here is they're defrauding these campaigns. That's not a point they make in the video, but that's what it is. That's all I got for you today. Again, book is coming out in about 2 weeks. I am working on the audiobook. I'm working on getting final touches and all that sort of stuff on the printed version and on the ebook. I must confess, even though I've been working on this for a couple years now, and I step away from it for time to time, for a week or something, then go back and reread it, and I find mistakes and typos and errors I've made. I'm still finding them. Don't exactly have the following. All of you who are watching, I appreciate it. To buy myself a copy editor. I'm a decent copy editor, but you can't really copy edit your own stuff to a certain extent. It helps when you step away for a while than if you're doing it immediately after having written it. But I can't afford it. So you're going to get... It's still pretty darn clean. It's cleaner than a lot of newspapers I see today, which is saying something. So follow me on social media. Look out for the book. Go back there. Pause the video when I show you that QR code. I should put the QR code on this too. Again, going to update that. Buy my book. If someone comes across this and you're like, hey, I should talk to that guy, promote his book, and you've got a podcast that has more followers or whatnot, I'm happy to appear on that as well. I may do something special if I can get some subscribers here. I'll tell you what, if you subscribe to like the premium tier on this, which I think is $150, I will send you a signed copy of the printed book, and I will set up a Zoom meeting where we can talk about it. You can ask questions. So that's the plan. Do that. I'll put that on the website somewhere in print too. So thanks for watching. See you next time.